Would you, let's see, where are we? I will call the meeting to order at 8:37. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Cavell?
Here.
Powell?
Here.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Powell, McGillivray?
Here.
Powell? Charles?
Present.
Long is absent with notice. Moss?
Here.
Markham?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Excellent. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next up, we have approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion? Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Moss. We vote, right? Everybody vote on approval of the agenda.
McGillivray?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously?
Kowal?
Oh, I thought you said yes. I'm
Didn't say anything yet, but yes.
sorry. Okay.
Okay, so we have two people voting by voice, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
We're good? Okay, agenda has been approved. Next up, we have public comment. Is there anyone from the public who cares to join us this morning?
Yes.
Come to the end of the table, state your name and the community you live in. Welcome. Nice job.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Catherine Kennedy. I'm from Oakland County, and I have to admit, I prayed for green lights this morning since the meeting was changed to 8:30 in the morning with construction in many areas.
Me too.
Where do I begin? The transparency and lack of respect to the citizens of this board is unbelievable. You injected a meeting on June 30th at the last hour to approve taking this money of $244 million for our county, and you have this late date meeting to interject it again to do all the approvals. I don't know how it's possible in this United States. I really don't. People do not want their sheriff's department defunded. People do not want illegal immigration permeating our country, our communities, our cities. And while we were protesting the unconstitutional mask mandate that was done, by the way, at the last hour right before the news, and without even being brought up in the public safety meeting earlier that morning. Was it strategic? It kept Homeland Security busy long enough to where they had to postpone that meeting until August 31st. And imagine that, on the 31st, 4 more proposals show up that hadn't existed as of August 25th, which was supposed to be the published final budget hearing meeting. The budget hearing statements themselves on August 11th were simply a department name and a time. There was no link to any data. And through the middle of this entire 2-year budget transformational initiative to change the entire core of our community against our wishes and against our will without even understanding what the citizens want, I guarantee you. Because you're operating in a hidden chasm somewhere. Hurry up, we'll hurry up and get it in 18 hours. They can't possibly go through 1,077 pages. You're right. Neither could you. So the fact that these major fiscal decisions are being made so recklessly with our tax dollars that we have worked very hard to be diligent and proper stewards of our environment, of our communities, of our money, to where we were not in a position where we were about to go bankrupt even before all this came. But now the citizens' equity is being squandered throughout this country on people that have no merit. They have no reason to be here. They're not even expected to learn English, for goodness sakes. And how are we assimilating this country? No, it's using division against people, and they're failing in math. There is zero savings account in this federal government. Zero. This is all deficit debt that is being thrown on every one of us as citizens. The first $1.9 trillion cost every American man, woman, and child $5,400 in debt with interest.
Ms. Kennedy, your time is up, so please wrap up your comments.
Thank you. I just feel unless this community steps up and does the right thing for the right fiscal reasons to set an example for the rest of the country, our democracy is doomed. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Thank you for your comments. Okay, next up, we have approval of the agenda. Or no, we move on to our regular agenda. Sorry, we already approved it. Item A is appropriation of the American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds for county pandemic and recovery operations. I need a motion. Commissioner Cavell, supported by Commissioner Charles. Is someone here to talk about this, Mr. Jen?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I won't repeat, all of the same information from the last meeting. This resolution would authorize $10 million in spending from the ARP, state and local fiscal recovering funds for the current fiscal year. As we've worked to ensure that all of our pandemic-related costs are incurred for the past year are covered, and made sure we're maximizing all of the other federal and state funds available. This authorization would cover those expenditures not covered by another funding source, which are outlined in the memorandum that was provided. As we move into fiscal year 2022, we'll be shifting into a world where we're providing specific budget allocations and authorizations for spending from these funds upfront. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'll call on Commissioner Moss, but if you want to speak, remember to hit the green button and I will take the people in order. But Commissioner Moss, you go first. Down at the bottom, it says permission to speak or request to speak, little green button.
Actually, it doesn't say that, but,
Oh,
okay. Madam Chair, recognized. Not that green button. Okay, let me make sure I understand, because I'm not sure I do. We are appropriating money to cover the costs of spending the ARA money, basically. Cost of administrating the ARA, I mean, is that it or not?
That's a portion of it. That's not
Yeah.
all of it.
No, but this is, so the source of this money that we are spending to cover the cost of spending the free money is ARA or regular other county?
This is all ARP funds. So
Okay,
it's
so-
both the cost of administering those funds and the outside support we need for that, as well as other eligible costs related to the pandemic response in terms of IT projects that have needed to be incurred, extra payroll costs that have been needed above and beyond, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so to administer the spending of the free money, we have to incur some administration costs, but we're going to pay for those administration costs with more free money, basically.
The costs of administering the funds are an eligible cost
Okay, it's ARA money paying for the administration of ARA money. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's only.
What do I know?
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Woodward?
I think I pushed the button. Did I push the button?
You did.
Okay, good. All right, and now I'll unpush the button. All right. So, I mean, to build on Commissioner Moss's questioning, we set aside $10 million of general fund to front expenses that we knew that we had to deal with, knowing that there would likely be state dollars, and then later there was the ARPA package advance to reimburse us. So this, in large part, is actually putting back that money, using the ARPA dollars to put back the money that we spent in our savings account before we had any of these federal dollars. So I think it's important to say. And yes, there are administrative costs to being able to administer those things, and I think that they're very much detailed in how this $10 million kind of like putting back the funding that we took from our general fund to advance costs so that we could actually do the testing and do all the appropriate response to react to this pandemic appropriately. And I think that was it was the appropriate move. We, frankly, as a county, were in a better position to be able to do that without having to borrow money to be able to do those things. And this is this is actually putting back those dollars that we did. We have the ad hoc pandemic committee that was meeting and was authorizing the release of those funds over the course of the last year. And completely transparent and having a lot of those conversations. In this packet, in this resolution, you'll see the list of all the contracts that basically that we're paying for. One of them that I ask, and we've all been relying on Guidehouse to help provide the compliance work necessary to make sure that everything that we are using these dollars for are a legitimate expense, an approved expense per the Treasury guidelines. And it's been incredibly helpful to make sure that we do all those things properly and all these costs are appropriately reimbursable. The thing that, and one of the reasons why I supported tabling this from the last meeting till now, is I feel very strongly that per our policy that contracts above a certain amount ought to come before this board, be approved by this board, and we provide all the appropriate oversight for those types of contracts. And so, in your package, you'll see a number of those. You'll see a full accounting of all of them. You'll see specifically the Guidehouse contract. You'll see some of the correctional services. And there's a few other things, and kind of a general summary of all of these things that I believe in the course of this resolution that we have a duty and obligation to affirm and approve those contracts. Now, I realize this is kind of after the fact. I don't think that there's there's nothing on here that was a surprise. These were things that were talked about, discussed, this board has relied on using. But going forward, and I want to commend Mr. Jen of communicating to all departments that there shall be no release of any of these funds without approved spending or an approved contract or some action of this board giving permission to use these ARPA dollars and tightening that up. This county moved and responded in this pandemic with a pace that I've never seen any government move. The frequency, not just meeting of this body, but the numerous oversight committees we had for the CARES dollars, the frequency and willing of all commissioners in our oversight statutory and constitutional responsibilities to gather, even gather more frequently between board meetings as necessary to do our job so that this county shows up and does what's necessary to help get us through this pandemic. And I'm incredibly proud of what this county's been able to do. And systems, complete systems that have been built. And we all talk about, when we go back to our respective communities, whether it's that we've all recognized the need for mental health services, supporting of our schools, and all those types of things. This county was never built up to be a grant-making agency. And we have built the systems in place so that we can actually bring in these federal dollars, so that Washington is not dictating where these dollars go, that Oakland County has an ability to make sure that those dollars go in the places that we informed by all of our collective local perspective, goes to as fast as possible. I mean, seeing $10 million, I mean, I'm just going to speak specifically of the nonprofit grants, I mean, earlier, to be able to get an application, a review process, and get checks out in less than a 45-day period is unheard of generally in government, but was possible here in Oakland County. And I want to, applaud Mr. Jen on, your leadership of the department, as well as all the people in Oakland County that played a role in doing this. And so, I am supportive of moving forward on putting, basically allocating ARPA dollars that were awarded to Oakland County to reimburse us for advancing money so that we could respond accordingly. Want to keep all the good practices in place, and along the way, I want to make certain in this resolution, and I don't know if we have to write the amendment right now, to formally approve the Guidehouse contract, and frankly, any contract that is, any new contract that didn't have either expressed approval by this board or the funding wasn't put up front in advance to, go through our purchasing policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Commissioner Woodward. Anybody else? I better go back and look at the thing.
I just pressed the button.
Details. Did you want to talk, Commissioner Cavell? Yeah. Oh, I see. Commissioner Charles first, followed by Commissioner Cavell. I was on the wrong page.
It's okay. I totally understand. So thank you, Chair. I also appreciate the board chair highlighting some of those things. And as I mentioned to Commissioners Powell and Woodward, I spent the latter part of my evening yesterday watching the finance meeting from last week, yay, on YouTube. So I have some high-level interpretation of some of the concerns that people had last week. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. One of the attachments says ARP contracts. It's basically a spreadsheet, and it's got totals and some narratives attached. And this will tie into my question, where I'm interested in knowing, so it sounds like we're shoring up expenditures that we basically, I get it on that level. I just want to make sure, when I heard in the conversation last week, you guys mentioned something about inmates doing some cleaning, or that they wouldn't be able to do cleaning because of COVID protocols. I'm just wondering, if they were doing the cleaning, are they included in that compensation? Like the cleaning of the animal shelter and things like that. There was a company that we have a contract with. Let's say that contract is $100 and we had them do $500 more of work. Is that how we are shoring up those resources? Or did at some point this cleaning company, for example, did they come back to us and say, well, we'll need more money, and that's how we arrived at it? Or was it more cart before the horse, where we just was like, do it, and then we'll pay that with this set of money, if that's clear? Clear as mud.
Sure, I can speak to that. So the situation specific to the animal shelter is that historically, the inmate trustees from the jail have been able to perform that service. Early in the pandemic, it was recognized that was not a safe measure anymore. There was a contract, that was bid out and issued to Sabre, which is a company that also does general custodial services for the county, who picked up providing those services. The cost of that was initially provided through CARES Act dollars. And, so that went through a competitive bidding process, was funded through CARES Act dollars. As we've exhausted the CARES Act dollars, this resolution just recognizes that we have to start picking up those costs with ARP dollars.
Okay.
So
Thank you,
I
Chair.
hope that's clear.
Yes.
But it's confusing.
Thank you, Commissioner Charles. Commissioner Cavell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First, Commissioner Charles and I weren't here when the Pandemic Response Initiative Ad Hoc Committee was established, so how does that work, especially in relation to this?
Sure. So the Pandemic Ad Hoc Committee was charged with oversight and approval of spending from a $10 million advance out of the general fund, so that costs that had to be
Was this sorry to interrupt, this was the thing in January that we did? The $10 million
Yes.
in January, not something in 2019?
Correct. So,
or 2020.
we've then spent the time to figure out, as other fund sources have become available, including the ARP dollars, but also some other fund sources in terms of FEMA, Health Department grants. We've worked to identify how we can use those other fund sources to cover the costs that were initially approved out of the general fund, so that those general fund dollars can return, to the general fund and be available for other things, as we move forward into next year. So a portion of this $10 million is moving costs off of that general fund onto the federal ARP funds.
Gotcha. Okay. So then the committee, the ad hoc committee will meet often?
I think the ad hoc committee will just need to meet one more time to kind of close out, the use of the general
handoff.
fund and the fact that, we've moved those costs now onto other things.
Okay.
And there won't be a need for that committee going forward, but I would defer to the chairman on that.
Okay. Now, the two contracts that we're also looking at, the Guidehouse and then the Aramark, I don't know how to say this. Aren't these more, shouldn't we have seen them earlier before they were executed? And I know that
So
we've all been using Guidehouse.
Right, so
but-
I'll take them one at a time. On the Airmark contract, that was a contract that had been bid out, had been authorized via CARES Act spending, so it's a continuation of that contract. The Guidehouse contract, I would emphasize a couple things. One is we actually had Guidehouse on board to help us with CARES Act compliance, although that was via a state contract that we were attached to. That contract did go through a competitive bidding process, that was open and transparent. I think, there was a technical miss here in terms of there wasn't specific ARP spending authorized, at the time it was awarded. So that's a function of things moving quickly. But certainly, to the chairman's point, we'll make every effort and take every measure to make sure we don't have a technical miss like that going forward.
So because of a technicality, you made a $450,000 contract, and now you're asking us to make $787,000?
Mr. Jen, can you speak up? We're having a hard time hearing you at the end
sure.
of the table here.
Yep. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, you're saying because of a technical mishap, because of a state subcontract or something, you made a $450,000 contract that we did not see.
Right.
And now you're asking us to not only become aware of how big that contract is, because I know that we've all been using Guidehouse, but 450 is different than not knowing. And you want us not just to learn about this contract now, but also add $337,000 to it.
So there are actually two components to the contract with Guidehouse. So the $450,000 is the ARP funded portion that covers, their technical assistance, in terms of compliance with ARP funds. The remaining $300,000 in change is utilizing a project manager that we brought on board to help get us better organized around the Workday project. So those dollars have a separate fund source in terms of the Workday project. So those dollars, that portion of the contract is not really being authorized today because there's a separate project budget that already existed and was approved by this board.
Okay, but isn't our threshold for seeing things that cost $250 or more?
Well, this probably falls into a gray area in terms of being, a contract amendment rather than a
Right,
new
so-
contract. And I think there's some work to be done going forward to kind of clear up those gray areas.
What would you suggest we do? Because I understand the need and I understand the urgency, but, that feels yucky. Also, then the $900,000 contract amendment, with Aramark, who's been a contractor with the Sheriff's Office for 18 years, which also sounds like bad form.
I don't think I'm in a position to, kind of to offer a policy recommendation today, but, I know there's a need for additional discussion and analysis and to kind of firm up that policy.
Okay. Because it, to me, it just looks like that you could, if you wanted to, right, to get your druthers, $1.3 million with less oversight than is desired because of gray area. So that doesn't feel good to hear. Just FYI. Am I misreading that or misunderstanding? I know that might not have been the intention, but that looking at it cold.
I would not disagree with.
Okay,
with
we
your
got to sort out the gray
perspective on
area.
this.
Understood.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, Mr. Cavell. Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions for Mr. John? Commissioner Woodward.
Sorry, I'm looking at actually the contract page and my button's not on there. I didn't want to lose my place.
Everybody, please speak up and into the mics because it's hard to hear
Yeah,
everybody.
and are these mics on or
I'm
is this
not
mic?
sure
I
they
think
are.
these mics just go to the video feed, so I don't think.
I'll have them turn it up.
Yeah,
Well,
turn
that
them
would
all
be
up.
help. Yes, because for the longest, I got it. Okay, great. So, as the resolution's written, I guess I want to respond a little bit also to Commissioner Cavell's point of view. I'm gonna lay out what my position on contract oversight is. We adopted a policy. There are probably there's some things that can be worked to improve that, and I've already talked to the administration. We're going to work to improve that policy in terms of ensuring that all contracts above a certain threshold, we had landed on a $250,000 threshold, shall come before this board. Professional contracts versus contracted services, and a little about the distinguishing differences between those two. We're going to continue to talk about that, and once we get through this and the budget, it is a top priority to wrap up by the end of this year. I'll just lay out what my position is. If we're spending money that's a contract that's $250,000 or higher, it shall come before this board. I'll speak for myself, will not support allocating any resources to a contract that does not come before this board. And I believe it's absolutely critical and necessary for this board to do its statutory and constitutional responsibilities of oversight to see those contracts come forward before they're executed. Now, I also realize that there are situations, and I'll lift up the Sabre Building Services contract. Pandemic happens, we can't use in the jail. What was the program called again?
Trustees.
The trustee program. We can't use the trustee program to, additional contact, moving people back and forth between the two facilities. We need to respond now. The animals in there need to be cared for and all this other types of stuff. We need to move, so there has to be some flexibility. And then I think there needs to be some process of reporting that and us taking the appropriate action going forward and reviewing the competitively bid process. This also directly links to our purchasing policy. Also is going to be part of this conversation that needs to be updated to make certain that we are getting a good mix of bidders on our government contracts in Oakland County, across this region, and overseeing that process as well, which I do have a lot of confidence in currently. So with these things that are in here, to the extent that we didn't see these contracts, we didn't, that they didn't come through, or a funding source before they were executed weren't put in place, there's an acknowledgement that is true. We are talking about it almost, I don't see anything on here that was like, oh, I did not know we were doing this, or we weren't spending these resources here, and so we're going to tighten these systems up moving forward. And frankly, from an oversight perspective, I would say the system is working. Can we tighten it up? Yes, it is working because all of this stuff is before us right now. And I will say, having been on this board for 15 years, this level of detail, having these contracts before us, at this level, has never happened before. And that is, a bit of an insertion of this board's authority and insistence on this oversight. It is a result of working in partnership with management and budget. It is a commitment by all parties to make certain that how every cent is used is fully documented and the approval process along the way is done in a forum like this. And there's more to do, and we did that all during the pandemic and a need to move at a very incredible pace, and we did all of those things. So the management budget has been incredibly helpful, pulling these things together, explaining what these things were used for, and bringing the accounting here. And I'm proud that this finance committee sees fit to take the steps necessary to approve these things. Now, going forward, I believe that this resolution does need an amendment that that the board actually approves the contracts that are in here, because it's a bit after the fact, but I think just in terms of practice, I think it's critical. I don't have that amendment drafted up right now. I think it's something that can be drafted between now and the board meeting and an amendment made to the floor, knowing, as long as everyone here understands, that it would be to capture those contracts that that there wasn't a funding source for, that's above a certain threshold, that we will line out, and we know the contract number, we know what the amount was, we know what the terms are, and if there's any members of this body that wants to see the contracts in addition to the ones that were sent around that are on this list, I know management and budget can provide those. So I'm fine voting for this today, here in committee, with an understanding and asking staff to draft up a resolution that would affirm our approval of these contracts, albeit after the fact, but with an understanding of going forward how, things will be tighter up and it won't happen like this again.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Commissioner Cavell for a second time.
Thank you, Chair.
This says you get 3 minutes.
Oh, cool. Try and talk quicker than you, Ms. Kennedy. That's right. First, Chair, thank you for clarifying, and also, Kyle, I appreciate what you got to do every day to get this done, so understood. I'm going to vote no today, just because right actions have consequences. At the full meeting, happy to vote yes, especially with those amendments, and excited to figure out the gray matter, or how to figure out that gray area.
Using gray matter.
Yes, it's early. I had to drive from 8 Mile. Okay, I live in Ferndale.
Okay.
If I could, Madam Chair, I just want to, clearly affirm this administration's commitment to, transparent and effective and open bidding processes. I think you'll see that, we have been committed to that. We have used, competitive bid processes for the large majority of contracts, even during the pandemic. I appreciate the kind remarks in terms of the transparency, in terms of this contract list. Obviously, as a number of speakers have noted, things move fast during the pandemic. I think we've been effective stewards of both county and federal dollars, and just want to state that for the record. We look forward to working with this committee and this board to make this process as effective and transparent as possible.
Thank you. We're moving a lot of money. We've moved a lot of money in the past 18 months. CARES dollars, ARP dollars, our own budget, general fund dollars, and so on. So some of this is sorting out the buckets, making sure the dollars are being drawn from the right place. Before we move on, I just want to address the timing question about everything that we're doing. The Office of Management and Budget presented a budget to us at the end of July, which they always do. We then have hearings, which we had for 2 months. Basically, all of the major players who want money have to come in here and tell us what's what with the budget. And there were adjustments that were made. There are adjustments that will be made on Wednesday night. The budget has to be signed by the end of September. So everything that's been happening in between is really a negotiating process to, elevate those things that need to go, knock out those things that maybe we don't want to fund this year, and so on. But I really have appreciated the in-depth and seriousness with which everybody has taken this process. And so, we're just moving along between now and Wednesday, getting this budget into the form that it has to be for us to all be able to vote yes on Wednesday night. So I just wanted to address that, and with that, let's prompt the vote.
Cowell,
Yes.
Madam Chair, it passes 7 yeas, 1 nay.
Okay, thank you very much. So this item will move to the board on Wednesday with an amendment. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a closed session. And so with that, everybody who is not a member of finance, Pam's telling me something.
Yeah, we'll have to do a roll call before we go into closed session, and then, go ahead.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Kowal,
That we go into
supported by
closed session.
Commissioner Powell to go into closed session. Okay.
Okay, Cowell,
Yes.
I prompted the vote for the roll.
Okay, she's prompted the vote to go into closed session. give us a motion to accept the recommendation of Corporation Counsel under closed session and supported by Commissioner Colwell. You can go ahead. Any further discussion? Okay, you can prompt the vote.
Colwell?
Yes. Madam Chair, you have 78, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, next item on the agenda is public comment, second public comment session. If there's nobody here, oh, she's coming. I suppose I should let her comment. Come or I'm gonna close it. I'm waiting for you. I hope you give me brownie points for that.
Way to negotiate, Dan. That's a good negotiation. You know, from 10 to 3, good for you, you know? All right, Major Charles. All right.
Okay, so there's, you're asking these questions.
So I hear
You
you.
gotta kind of stay focused on the question we have to answer.
Thank you for that direction. Yeah, I get that. I get that. 'Cause we could just, the whole thing, yeah.
They're just finishing public participation and then motion to adjourn.
Yep, okay, you're gonna start my timer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we are in public comment. Again, please state your name and your place you live.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Kennedy from Lake Orion. And I'm here, I'd like to address a couple of things that I know there have been discussion points on going into today. I actually brought some props. There have been discussions about the healthcare situations with Beaumont and Spectrum. And I know Mr. Cavell asked me if I got Medicare and thought that meant I was on socialized medicine. I would tell you, no, it's not. I paid 45 years into the system to provide the insurance when I'm older. And I actually make sure I utilize Blue Cross to manage it, which I would tell you, I do not pay a single medical bill until Blue Cross reviews it. I will pass along, these are not mine, but these are real bills that have been passed along to me. Was it like over 8,000 versus 300? What concerns me is, and I plan to talk directly with the doctor. There were billings for depression. 2 different codes, no less. The overcharges or the amounts that were billed by the medical staff were completely reduced drastically to what is a reasonable amount for those services. And in reality, the individual went in for a swollen knee for X-ray and MRI. So there was no reason or a request to be evaluated for depression once, let alone twice. I don't know that the doctor did those billings or if it's somewhere else in the system, but the reality is the system's broken. When government does their own administration, it's always been the least efficient way we've ever done it in history. We used to do it this way in the 70s. The welfare in the 70s was horrid. We're putting some of those same programs back in place at a federal level that failed our country so badly that huge amounts of money from Social Security and Medicare have been removed to fund Medicaid. There's a huge difference. Medicare funding comes out of everybody's paychecks. So every time you go to work, there's a lot of those little, the first time you go to work and you go, oh my goodness, what happened to my pay? You've seen young people, they go, well, wait a minute, I did the math, it should have been this much. There's a lot that is paid, and people don't even really understand how everything in our government is being funded. It comes from the people that are working, that are paying those monies into the different funds categories. And Medicaid is different because it is for people that do not have those funds. So yes, we do use portions of that way, but they're very different categories. What people pay in for Social Security and Medicare are not welfare programs. They are things that have been paid for by the people of the citizens of this country in order to create those systems that are now being squandered on people that do not contribute whatsoever.
Okay, your time is up, Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. How do I stop this motor? I'm done.
You did it.
Okay.
You got it.
No, I didn't. It looks.
No, that's. Oh.
Okay, gotcha. All right, last item on the agenda is other business or adjournment. I just want to remind everybody, approving the budget will happen on Wednesday night at the board meeting. Is it Wednesday or Thursday? Wednesday night. And as we always do, there will be a few amendments presented on the floor, just some cleanup items. And they're being talked about by the board chair and the caucus chair of the Republicans and the caucus chair of the Dems to just kind of get those all pulled together. There's probably less than 7 of them. There's just a few. But that's pretty typical. Every year we have amendments at the end. And that, I'm hoping everybody's had their questions answered about the budget and will be willing to support it on Wednesday night. If you have questions, if you need things straightened out before then, please raise your hands and let us know. We don't want any surprises that somebody was unhappy and didn't get dealt with. Okay? So anybody else have anything they want to bring before the Finance Committee? 1, 2, 3. We are adjourned at 10:29. Thanks, everybody.